What's up, y'all? Welcome into another edition of DNVR Rams Live, presented by our friends at Branded Bills. Head to brandedbills.com. Use that code BBDNVR for 15% off of your first order. Hope everybody has had a great week thus far. Happy Friday. I've got a big game coming up tomorrow against San Jose State. CSU men's basketball looking to extend the winning streak to 7. We're able to grind out that 6th win in a row on Tuesday night against Fresno. I've got a couple of pieces up on the site. You can find those at thednvr.com. I'll be breaking down some of the takeaways from that game. We'll play post-game clips, talk about this team in the big picture sense, talk about whether they might be able to replicate some of the magic that they created in March this past year. The Rams might just be heating up at the right time on the men's and the women's side. Actually, we've got a lot to get into. I will, in this first segment here, spend a little bit of time talking about Caleb Wilson, who is reportedly CSU's new wide receiver coach. We speculated a little bit on Monday about what might happen with Kashif Moore going to Penn State. Of course, like 20 minutes after the show ends, it comes out. I think Football Scoop had it first that Mora was reportedly bringing over Wilson, who played at tight end for him at UCLA, was the assistant wide receiver coach at UW. I'll get into all of that details here. Just if you missed it, we do have a Die Hard promo going at the moment. It's a great offer. You can become a DNVR Die Hard for 55% off. Basically getting all of my content along with everything else we do at DNVR for a year for the price of a t-shirt, on top of getting a free t-shirt. So, I mean, you get that too. You get 15% off at the DNVR bar, access to premium events and exclusive opportunities for people in the DNVR diehard community. It's a great way to support local journalism, obviously. But if you like what I do, if you love the in-depth Rams coverage, being able to nerd out, on basketball, and we've got spring football coming up, please consider subscribing now and becoming a DNVR diehard. To make it worth your while, we'll certainly have a ton of spring ball content. I just booked my travel for Las Vegas for the Mountain West tournament. I'm really looking forward to that. We do have 3 games, though, in between now and the tournament. A lot still to be decided as far as the league goes. At the end, I'll kind of get into whether the Mountain West should be considered a one-bid league or not. It irks me a little bit that the parity at the top and the cannibalization is probably going to hurt the league in the end, instead of everybody beating everybody being an indicator of the talent in the league and it being used to give the league the benefit of the doubt, like it is for, the Big Ten and some of these other conferences. They eat up on each other. SEC football, that's always the meme, right? It's just one of those scenarios where the narratives are kind of predetermined. You know how they're going to work, but I'll still probably go into these next couple of weeks feeling pretty confident that the league will get multiple bids. Anyways, I'm getting ahead of myself. If you missed it the other day, I posted after the win over Fresno State, Scott Steiner, legendary wrestler, father of CSU point guard Brandon Rechsteiner, followed the DNVR Rams account. Maybe my favorite follower of all time. No offense to anybody in the CSU community. Much love to all of you as well. That's just one of those, if you could go back and tell 10-year-old J Mike that Scott Steiner is going to follow your account, it would break my brain. I was the perfect age for the peak of TNA wrestling, and he was a big part of that, along with AJ Styles and Samoa Joe, some guys who went on to be WWE stars as well. But I loved that stuff back in the day. So it's kind of a full circles moment. Funny how life works like that. But yeah, let's talk about the new wide receivers coach, Caleb Wilson. He was most recently the assistant wide receivers coach at UW. Has not officially been announced as the new wide receivers coach by CSU. That should happen soon. Washington's already removed his profile page on their staff directory, which is essentially an indirect confirmation. It makes a lot of sense, obviously, given the fact that he played for Mora at UCLA, most recently worked under Jimmy Doherty, who we speculated a little bit about maybe being somebody who could be in the mix for the wide receivers coach job. Instead, it ends up being Wilson. I've read a little bit about him, don't know a ton about him, admittedly. He is an up-and-coming coach, seemed to be pretty popular in the UW circles. Maybe we can get some of the guys we had on before the Washington game to get some insight, some perspective from people who have been around him, these last couple of years. But from a relationship standpoint, it certainly makes sense for Mora to go with somebody who worked for coaches who are a part of his tree and played for him. I like that he has NFL pedigree. He was the 7th round pick by the Arizona Cardinals in 2019, played for 4 or 5 teams. Washington, I believe, was on the Broncos practice squad a couple years ago at the end of his career. He's also the son of a coach, which a lot like Jim Mora, he's a football lifer. His dad, Chris Wilson, a longtime defensive coordinator at the collegiate rank. He, I believe, was coaching at USC when Wilson initially walked on with the program out of high school. Then they ended up moving on from his dad, so he transferred to UCLA. Had a big career, had some big moments and some big wins for UCLA. I think his career game against Texas A&M is one people kind of remember and look back on. He was somebody who ended up making a pretty big impact, and he certainly had the frame of a wide receiver despite playing tight end. He did on-field work at UW, so it's not like he's coming into this role completely green or inexperienced, despite, not being the head wide receivers coach. I do think it was important that they went out and got somebody who has on-field experience working with wide receivers, just given that the assistant wide receiver coach on staff right now is actually somebody who's throughout his career been a defensive coach. So I think it was important to go get somebody who had some experience there. Your options are certainly limited at this stage of the process. We talked about that the other day. You don't fault Kashif Moore for taking a great opportunity. Getting to coach at Penn State is certainly huge. I mean, that's a top 10 program in college football today, so you don't fault him. The timing of it all is just tough. And frankly, CSU and CU have had some of that this spring of bad timing. It's just so much easier to replace these coaches if they're leaving in January, but that's part of the process, and you have to be able to adjust on the fly. I think if you're looking for a reason to be optimistic, clearly when you look at his track record and how he sent a lot of coaches to P4 schools in recent years, Mora has an eye for talent. So I trust his judgment here. Makes sense to lean on a relationship. Again, it's not like we can look at a huge sample size of work at this point. Had he been the lead guy at Washington, I will say the UW receiving core the last couple of years, they had some really talented guys, Audric Harris and some of those players. I was actually hoping to potentially land one of them in the portal. He went to Hawaii instead. But I'm interested to see kind of how that plays out. That it's definitely a position group that you need more consistency from in 2026. I feel like you just didn't do a ton to maximize that group this past fall. A couple of guys came on somewhat strong as the season went on. I did feel like, Levon Brown and Tommy Maher and some of those guys out wide were able to put up a little bit better production as the season progressed. And in defense of that group, I've talked about it a ton, but it's tough to look like a stud receiving core when you have the offensive inconsistencies that CSU had, when you have a revolving door at quarterback, when you have 3 offensive play callers in a 12-game season. It wasn't a recipe for success across the board. And so I want to be fair to those guys, hoping that a little bit more stability will be able to, bring out what I think are nice traits with, especially like a Tommy Maher in the slot. I like that they went out and they got some speed. I do think they're going to need to hit on a couple of these transfers. And you look at Vic, you look at Mosley, you look at some of these guys that they brought over. There's a lot to like from a tools perspective. But I mean, a lot of these guys are certainly looking for an opportunity to prove themselves. It's not like you have an established star coming in or something like that. Although Reginald Vick at the D2 level was a stud, averaged like almost 30 yards a catch, was a big time playmaker. He's somebody who I'm excited about. I think he's going to be dangerous in the open field. You need more though from that group. I do think that tight end is probably going to be a bigger emphasis. it certainly was these past couple of years for the UConn offense than what we had seen at CSU, at least, the past 2 years. I think they had stretches under Norvell, obviously with Holker, where they got the tight end involved a little bit more. But as a whole, over the 4-year stretch, that was an area of the offense that was lacking as well, and the inability to attack the middle of the field with consistency. So, I mean, it's going to be interesting in general to see how all of these guys at the skill positions are able to get acclimated at CSU. I think they've got some really exciting players coming in, really at all the positions on the offensive side. Like Haas Haney is really intriguing as a dynamic athlete at quarterback. Even Farrar, coming over from UConn, I'm really excited to see what he can be. I'm excited to see some of these wide receivers that are coming over from UConn, and if they can kind of be the steady group that allows you to kind of transition here. It would have been nice to land a couple more of the established players from that UConn offense, a couple of the backs, receivers, that kind of stuff ended up at P4 schools. But just having some guys that are familiar with the system should hopefully allow you to hit the ground running. And just from the simple perspective of like knowing how the program operates. Every team practice is different. Every coach operates different with how they do things day to day. When you have to teach the entire roster, 80 plus guys, how you do things, that takes time. So you can essentially lean on those guys, even if they aren't going to be like the stars on the field come this fall, of just like helping some of these new players that are coming over from bigger schools, or that you are banking on being significant contributors to help them get acclimated. But that's where we're at with the wide receiver position, Coach. I just wanted to give a little update before we moved on, since we speculated a little bit about it on Monday. We'll see how that all plays out. It certainly is a bummer that there won't be as much offensive continuity on staff as you would have hoped for. I think we mentioned this on Monday, but I will say having Price Tracy, I think, is deceptively huge. Just somebody who is working with the quarterbacks. Like, if you are going to keep any of the coaches that you had, yes, you would have loved Gordon Samus and the running backs coach to come over as well. You would have loved to have had Kashif Moore, given that he developed Skylar Bell, a Bolitnikoff finalist. But you've got the guy who was working with your quarterbacks directly, and you've got the guy who was working with the offensive line. And that's huge. I mean, it all starts in the trenches. It's a quarterback game. So I'm still really excited to see what this offense can look like, despite, some of the struggles, if you want to phrase it that way, and hanging on to some of the key assistants from that UConn run these past years when the Huskies won 9 games in back-to-back seasons. We are going to transition. We are going to get into some hoops. As the Twitter chat says here, really wish we could have gotten at least 1 year with the original staff. Me too. I mean, under perfect circumstances, you would have had total continuity on the offensive side of the ball, because that UConn offense was electric. That's unfortunately the downfall of the success at that level, though, is it catches the attention of schools like TCU. So it's both encouraging and discouraging, right? Because that replicating what UConn was able to accomplish is going to be difficult without that continuity. That said, and maybe this is me talking myself into it, I also think the fact that Mora has coaches that are desired at a national level is a positive indication of his eye for talent and the type of people that he's going to have in his program. I mean, I think you could even kind of look at it like the early CSU basketball years under Medved, right? Like, you lose J.R. Blunt to Iowa State, you lose Thorson to Minnesota. You don't want it to be a revolving door year to year. If you're constantly having to replace your entire staff year in and year out, that's certainly not a recipe for success. But it is kind of a balance of, you don't want to be in a position where you're having to replace everyone, but you also don't want to be in a position where you have nobody who's worth poaching, So it's kind of a glass half full, glass, half empty type dilemma. But yes, like under perfect circumstances, you would have had total continuity on the offensive side of the ball for at least 1 year. Get the ground, or get the ball rolling, get your program established and all that, established the floor of your program was what I was trying to say. Their brain went dead. I've been up late covering the Avs the past couple of nights, so bear with me. I'll actually have double duty on Saturday, so I maybe won't have as many tweets as you guys are accustomed to, but I'll certainly still have game coverage. I'll have written pieces that come out, especially, if they keep this win streak going. It'll set up a really fun final week of the regular season. We are going to transition into hoops. Let me shout out our partners real quick. We'll play a clip of Ali Farokhmanesh after the break here and kind of set the scene for the hoops combo. But yeah, let's shout out those partners, and then we'll keep the party rolling. Trucks have always been a part of Toyota's DNA. For generations, Toyota has built durable legends destined for greatness and perfect for Colorado. Whether you're conquering off-road trails, whether you are hauling the weight of the world, there's a Toyota truck that's just right for you. Check out the Tacoma. Check out the Land Cruiser. Toyota offers 17 models with available all-wheel drive or four-wheel drive like the Epic 4Runner. Toyota also offers more low and zero-emission vehicles combined than any other automaker to give customers numerous choices to reduce their carbon footprint. 16 different hybrid vehicles to choose from, like the Tundra iForce Max hybrid truck. Not to be outdone, though, Toyota SUVs take command on the road and on the trail, so you can explore the road less traveled without sacrificing smooth city rides in SUVs like the RAV4 and Grand Highlander. Toyota really is perfect for Colorado living because you get the dependability, also the option to weather, the storm when you're driving and it's snowing sideways. You want to have that all-wheel drive capability, but you also want to have good gas mileage. You want consistency. Toyota always delivers. They are a proud partner of CSU Athletics and the official vehicle of DNVR. Toyota, let's go places. I also want to talk to you about our friends over at Game Time. I'm stoked that we are getting to the stretch half of the NBA season here. Things really ramp up on the hockey and basketball side of things professionally. There's nothing better than being in the stands for a big game, watching Nikola Jokic ball out, hitting an absurd three that just leaves you shaking your head like he did the other night. Getting tickets, though, that can be a different story. There are so many times that in the past I wanted to be able to go to a Nuggets game and I just couldn't find the right value. They're charging out the wazoo or we're getting hit with a bunch of fees. And that's why I love the Game Time app. It gives back to the fans. It's the hack for unlocking amazing tickets and experiences in just a few taps. It's incredibly easy to use, and the Game Time guarantee means you can trust you'll get 100% authentic tickets on time and at the best price. They've got all kinds of options to save you money, from zone deals where you pick a section, Game Time picks the seats specifically, and you can save, I think, like up to 15%. You can get a panoramic view from the seat before you buy, so you know what you're getting into, make sure it's not obstructed or something like that. Take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use that code DNVR for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create an account, redeem that code DNVR for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Like I said, we are going to transition to hoops. I will say, intriguing comment from CD Sticks. That's something I could ramble on. What might have been had Timmy Chang stuck around instead of landing the Hawaii gig. Clearly, the guy's got an eye for talent, and what he's been able to do from an optimization standpoint with that run and shoot offense out there has been fun to see. Easy guy to root for. It was a cool opportunity for him, but would Jay Norvell still be the coach today if Timmy Chang had stuck around? It's a debate. I am going to play a clip here of Ali Farokhmanesh. This was his opening statement from the comeback win against Fresno State the other night, 74-70. The Rams trailed by as much as 13 in the game. Really felt like it was an instance of adjusting on the fly. They showed real toughness. Didn't love the offensive mentality early. Thought they settled into things. We'll talk about all that. But here is Ali Farokhmanesh with his opening statement after the win over Fresno State, CSU's 6th consecutive win.
On that note, no, I told the guys in the locker room too. I'm never gonna say that before the game, but I felt it. I felt it at practice yesterday that there was probably gonna be a little let up, and we were fighting them on it a little bit, and we were trying to get them juiced up to go for the game. But there was definitely a let up, and that is human nature, and you're trying to fight that every day as a coach. But to go from Wyoming in an emotional game where you have to make a comeback to win in front of a big crowd. Then you got to travel on the road and the travel issues that we had going into that game to find a way to win it. And then you turn around 2 days later and you play San Diego State in an emotional game in an orange out. And then you turn around, you got only 2 days in between the next one. While they have an extra day of rest, they played Tuesday, Saturday, Tuesday, where we went Wednesday, Saturday, Tuesday. So for us to find a way to win this game, I thought that was key. Didn't need to be pretty, just needed to find a way. And I thought our guys, they found a way to win. They executed well in the second half, started attacking the basket better. And to be honest, they did give us some open shots in the first half. We just clearly didn't have the same legs that we've had recently. So everyone needs a day off tomorrow. I told the staff, I don't want to see anybody in here. Well, I'm not going to be here anyway, so I don't want to see them either. And the guys, I don't want to see anybody in the gym besides with our trainer. We need a day off. It's been about 9 days since we've had a day off, so we need some time to get some rest now.
All right, I think Ali was spot on with a couple of things there. I didn't love the offensive mentality early. Felt like they were settling for outside jumpers early in the shot clock. They were open. Fresno, to an extent, was daring them to shoot, and had you cash them, maybe you don't go down the way that you did. But when you look at the success that CSU has established here over these last couple of weeks, it's directly coincided with that flipping mentality to play inside out, to get downhill, to be willing to be physical in the paint and really establish your will and get to the rim and get to the free throw line, which I feel like a broken record at this point, but I've talked about it so many times how important it is for the Rams to get to the free throw line. They didn't in that first half, in addition to missing a lot of open shots, and that was not a recipe for success. You go down by as much as 13, really feels like things are spiraling, but I do want to credit CSU. They never panicked. They had plenty of time. They knew it. They just continued to chip into that deficit. Even in the second half, Fresno kind of came out and had an initial little run. And I just felt like the Rams did a good job of weathering the storm. Cutting into the deficit before halftime was huge. That felt like a moment where things could really compound on you and you potentially go down 18, 19, 20, something like that at the break. And now you're really in trouble, kind of like you were in that first game against Fresno State. And instead, you end up cutting it to 7, actually had it to 5 before Fresno made a late bucket. That's been a theme a couple of times now in this win streak. Feels like the Rams close really strong over the final 2-3 minutes, and then they give up just a last-second shot that makes it not quite as impressive, on top of the refs actually took a point away from CSU after reviewing one of the three-pointers, or what we thought was a three-pointer, and ultimately got classified as a two-pointer. Ali joked about that a little bit post-game, just being like, gee, thanks a lot, guys. But it was not a pretty win, but I felt like it was an encouraging showing of this team's resilience, their ability to adjust on the fly, and a real showing of team toughness, which has been pretty consistent now throughout the win streak. And even before, I don't think the Rams played awful in that loss in Wyoming. They turned the ball over too much like they did in a couple of key losses in league play. They just missed a lot of open shots, unfortunately, and sometimes that happens. But we have seen this team really evolve from a maturity standpoint as the season has progressed, and I feel like this was a great example of that, right? I mean, you're getting kind of cooked early by Deshaun Gorey. I mean, he's a stud. I hate this type of commentary, but being realistic, I will say I am very intrigued to see where he ends up next year. If he ends up in the portal, that's somebody you would certainly love to contact if you were CSU or San Diego State or one of these other teams. He is just someone who gets to his spot with consistency. His touch is great. I think he hit 5 straight floaters at one point, was kind of doing whatever he wanted, and came out hot in the second half too. Hit a 3, hit another nice little runner in the paint, and you're just kind of sweating, being like, oh God, is this going to be a Bryce Hamilton UNLV scenario where he goes off for 36 or something like that? But I felt like the defense settled in, and they really made Fresno work harder in that second half. They ultimately outscored them, I think 26-11, something like that, over the final 8 minutes or so. The Rams seized control of this game, and they never looked back. You got to credit the toughness. You got to credit the shot making in the second half was certainly impressive. But I feel like it all kind of worked together, right? Your shot making improved, your efficiency certainly went up in the second half, but your shot selection also improved. So you were getting better looks, you're getting to the line with more consistency, and more importantly, you're getting stops and you're attacking in transition. One of the things that I feel like at times has been an issue for CSU is they're a little too willing to settle into a half court offense. They're really good in the half court, so I get it. But when you have an opportunity to get out and run, and we'll play a clip of this in a couple minutes here, you've got to take advantage of it. But to me, the biggest thing in this game was definitely just the flipping mentality. You're 4 of 18 from 3-point in the first half. You're jacking up shots left and right. They're not bad looks. A lot of them are open, but they're not falling. And that's where you have to have the maturity to say, all right, these aren't bad looks, but for whatever reason, they're just not falling for us. I'm going to put the ball on the floor and I'm going to try and make something happen. I'm going to drive and maybe I kick it out to an open shooter and maybe he drives. Now all of a sudden you've got the defense in motion and it opens up driving lanes for someone else. Just the ability to keep the ball flowing, to play inside out. You're going to get good looks inherently because you run the 4 out or 5 out pretty consistently on the offensive end. You're always going to get those looks, but you increase your margins so significantly when now all of a sudden you're getting high quality shots at the rim, or you're getting to the free throw line where you are a really good free throw shooting team. I mean, that's a thing that CSU does a great job of. There have been times in the past where the Rams got to the line, but they couldn't make teams pay for it. And pretty consistently, even when the Rams were not winning some of these league games, they've been a good free throw shooting team. And it's been impressive to see this team adjust in game scenarios, right? Like, it's one thing to design a game plan and be able to execute it, but there are times where it's just going to not go the way that you thought. And the players kind of talked about Fresno did some things defensively early on that maybe surprised them a little bit. They had to adjust their mindset, and they did a good job of doing that. So I want to play a clip here of Ali Farokhmanesh talking about adjusting the mentality when it comes to shot selection and the concept of giving the basketball life, and basically how when you share the basketball, when you play inside out, it almost becomes contagious. He talked about that with shot making too. Like, you start making threes, all of a sudden they start to fall, but it gives the guys energy when you play collectively as a unit. And I think when it's really going right for this team, it's fun to watch. They can play pretty basketball. But here's Ali Farokhmanesh, talking about the shot selection and giving the ball life.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest. That's what's awesome with this group, though, is they are pretty self-aware. I wish they would have become more self-aware in the first 4 minutes of the game, but it was fun to watch them figure out a way and understand what was going on in the first half. Because in the first half you were 8 for 12 from 2, but out of our first 16 shots we shot 13 threes. Now they were open, so I don't want to tell them not to shoot them because most of them were pretty open. But that's one of the poorer defensive teams in the paint, and the whole thing this whole game was like attack the paint, drive the next closeout. And they started doing a way better job of that in the second half, attacking the paint, getting to the rim, and also drawing fouls.
Like you said, the threes were open, but in the second half you start playing more inside out, like paint threes, like Kyle called. How much easier is it to hit a three when they're paint threes as opposed to the just perimeter passing and trying to find the open shot?
Yeah, it's like we always talk about you give the ball energy, like move the ball, get a paint touch, kick it one more, pass to the next guy drives it, he gets a paint touch, he kicks it out, passes the next one. It feeds off each other. And then your first three, the biggest thing we talked about too was good to great, right? We were gonna get good shots, and I thought we did. We got good shots in the first half, and then I thought the second half we got great shots, and that was the biggest difference. Is we truly decided we were going to go from good to great, and they executed at a high level. I praise them also for the last possession of the game. That was just our motion. That was not a play call. That was nothing else. They ran our motion offense, and Kerry and Jevin executed it to a T and delivered it for a layup.
We're going to keep this conversation rolling. If you're watching live on YouTube and wouldn't mind hitting a thumbs up, I certainly would appreciate it. Hit us with a comment in the Toyota chat as well. If you got questions, I would be happy to answer them. We'll talk about the Mountain West and how many bids they might be able to get. We'll talk about the Mountain West power ranking as the show goes on. Got to take a quick breather real quick. Shout out a couple of our partners. We'll keep the party going. Do you need your fix of Raisin Canes? I do right about now. I am hungry. Order at raisincanes.com or on the Canes mobile app, where every chicken finger is a hand battered and cooked to order just for you. Every crinkle cut fry comes from grade A premium potatoes. Each thick sliced Texas toast is slightly brushed with Canes garlic butter blend and grilled on the griddle to golden brown perfection. Most importantly, the secret recipe Canes sauce is made in restaurant every day. Little pro tip for you: who needs coleslaw? Sub it for an extra piece of Texas toast. Make yourself a little chicken Sammy. Fix those hunger cravings on the go now on the Canes mobile ordering platform. Raising Cane's chicken fingers, one love. I also want to talk to you about Xfinity and the Xfinity 5-year price guarantee. What if you could have reliable and intelligent Wi-Fi? What if you could keep it at the same price for 5 years? That's the Xfinity 5-year price guarantee. Imagine Wi-Fi that makes everything in your home work together, that finds and fixes problems before you even notice them, like super intelligent Wi-Fi with a sixth sense that lets you stream the game even when the whole family's online. All your devices working in perfect harmony for 5 whole years. Here's the best part, y'all. No annual contracts, no hidden fees. Plus, Xfinity's best equipment comes included. Take it from me, a lot can change in 5 years. Championships are won, records are broken, dreams grow bigger, but your Wi-Fi, it should stay reliable and the price should stay put. Lock in your price and unlock the possibilities with Xfinity. Learn more at xfinity.com. Xfinity, imagine that. Select plans only. Restrictions do apply. Okay. I think I don't want to get too repetitive here, because I think Ali kind of hit it on the head, just with the shot selection being significantly improved in that second half. When you dive into the numbers, it's easy to see. You go 5 of 11 from 3-point in that second half versus 4 of 18 in the first. You get 15 free throw attempts in the second half versus 2 in the first. You're minus 12 in the paint in the first half. You're plus 6 in the second half. It was just everything worked together. Now all of a sudden you're sharing the ball better. You're drawing contact. You're getting to the rim. Your efficiency is improving. You're knocking down the threes that you're missing, but you're taking them at a slightly less volume. I just feel like the Rams did a good job of staying in the fight. And that's one thing that this team has significantly improved with as the year has gone on, the ability to hang around. And then, when you do ultimately get back in it, close, which has been very encouraging. I do want to take a second to shout out Brandon Rechsteiner, because I'm really impressed with his evolution as the season has gone on. He was somebody who came over from Virginia Tech and had shown that he can be a dangerous catch and shoot guy. Got put in a position where he's playing a little bit of a different role, being a point guard for this team. He's kind of in that Cayenne Evans vein now, where he is technically the point guard and we see him operate in that role for long stretches. But because of what Jace Butler's able to do, and even some of the bigs and stuff at the top of the key, you're able to put him in positions at time where he can play off ball. And when he's able to do that and he doesn't have to worry about facilitating for others, he's a really dangerous catch and shoot guy. And his efficiency has been really significant for CSU. I mean, over these last 3 games, 12 of 25 from 3-point, almost 50%. He's averaging about 18 points a game over these last 3 wins. Really has been impressive. And I know he had the bad behind the back pass, and it's easy to fixate on that. The silly, unnecessary turnover. You're just trying to do too much in that scenario. But as a whole, he's really cut down his turnovers of late. I mean, he's averaging less than 1.5 per game over the last 7, since he had 4 in that game at San Diego State, where he and really the entire team struggled with San Diego State's on-ball pressure in that game in Viejas. He's playing with a lot of confidence right now, and I love his willingness to let it fly when he gets going. Now, he is a streaky scorer, so he's somebody who can very easily shoot you in or out of a game. But what he has been doing in this winning streak has been very significant. And he's somebody I'd really like to see CSU hang on to going into next season, because I think if you can build around guys like him and Butler and hopefully Kerry Booth and Jorgensen, I mean, that's a really intriguing core of experienced players. You add a couple of key pieces, and it feels like the Rams could be pretty dangerous, especially if the offense that we're seeing from CSU, if the type of play we're seeing right now from Rechsteiner, from Jace Butler, from Kerry Booth, from all these guys is what you get for the entirety of next season, it really feels like the Rams can be a pretty dangerous team in the first era, the first season, I should say, of the Pac-12 era. I want to play a clip here of Ali talking about what he's seen out of Brandon Rechsteiner, as well as CSU being more willing to attack in transition. You know, a couple of those threes were the product of CSU getting a stop, getting a rebound, and then looking to run. I know Steve Ivey talked about this on his show the other night, how one of those corner threes that Rec got that really kind of put the game to bed for the Rams was the product of Kerry Booth being willing to run the floor. He takes the attention from the defender. You have to respect it. You can't just give him a wide open dunk. And it leads to an open shot in transition for Rechsteiner. He obviously cashes it confidently. He's been so big for CSU in this winning streak, and you hope to see it keep up, because if he can shoot the ball like this over these next couple of games throughout the Mountain West tournament, while continuing to, you know, cut down the turnovers and just make heady plays, this team can be dangerous. Like, they don't necessarily have a Neat Clifford, somebody who's just going to take the game over for 30 minutes at a time. But they have Jevin Mooney's, who can give you 13 in the second half like he did in this one. They have Rechsteiner, who can get hot and hit 5, 6, 7 threes in a game. Obviously, Jorgensen, Bemba, and what they're doing. I'm just impressed with the way that everybody seems to really understand what their role is on this team, and they don't really stray from it too frequently. But here is Ali Farouk-Manesh talking about Brandon Rechsteiner, as well as CSU leaning into that transition offense.
It's been fun to watch. Besides the behind the back pass to John Weber, John caught it. That was good. It was funny because we were joking about behind the back passes the other day, actually. But I'm so proud of him, and it's awesome to see him find success here. You know, and he's shooting the right shots. Like, I can't really complain. All the shots he shot tonight were the right ones, right time, feet set. We've been preaching to him about just run the floor. You're one of the best shooters in the country. You don't need to come back and get the ball. We got multiple guys that can handle the ball. You run the floor and they'll find you. And that's what happened when we were down 51-61. Those 2 threes, I believe, came off our transition Phoenix on a broken floor. And those guys found him, and he ran to space. And it was really cool to see. And you love to see that as a coach, because you preach so many things all the time, and when it comes to fruition, then you have something to back it up with.
What does it do for this team's confidence when a shooter like him starts to heat up? Like, is that something where you feel the vibe change?
Yeah, I think it's contagious. Like, just like missing threes isn't contagious, turning the ball over is contagious, and that's why we've gone on runs. Like, this team can go on runs, right? Because they all can share the ball, they all can shoot the ball. And so we're hard to guard in that sense when we can get going in transition. And I'll always remember the South Florida game is probably the best example of that, of just, man, we got out and ran, and it was just 3 after 3, and it was the right shots. And we can do that at times. And that's I told them in the locker room, like, I don't want to call plays. Like, I want to get stops and run in Phoenix. And that was a big key for us, is like, got out and ran.
Rechsteiner now shooting 38% from 3-point. In the stats that I have from the live stats that we follow in the game, listed as 16 points. I think they adjusted things, because when I went back and looked in the morning, now listed at 19 points with another made 3 on there. Regardless, whether it was 16, 19, he was huge in this win, and he has shot the ball, particularly in the second half, really well, and basically all of these wins. Now, San Diego State, he hit a couple of big shots on the road against UNLV. His consistency continues to be key for the Rams. Just a couple of key stats here that I wanted to throw out. We already talked about the difference in shot making in the second half versus the first half, 5 of 11 from 3-point in that second half. Rechsteiner doing the majority of that damage. But CSU had 15 second chance points in this game. That was actually a big factor in being able to hang around late in the first half. Augie, I know, has had some rough stretches visually for this team, but he had 4 offensive rebounds in that first half. That really was key. 7 different players on the Rams recorded an offensive rebound. So you just love to see the buy-in, the effort across the board. Guys working hard to extend the play. That's winning basketball. They're doing the dirty things right now. Early in the season, the Rams were winning by playing pretty basketball. They're whipping the ball around the perimeter. The shots were falling with more consistency from the perimeter early in the year. But that makes sense, right? You're not playing defenses that know everything about you like you are in league play. The physicality ramps up in league play. There's no secrets in the Mountain West portion of the schedule. They know exactly what the Rams are trying to accomplish functionally. And to see the way that guys have kind of taken some shots and evolved over the course of the year, it's been fun to see. You have 5 starters with double-digit figures in this game. Second straight game, I believe, where that was the case, or at least close to it. Kerry Booth, 11 points, 3 of 7 from the floor, but he also had 9 rebounds and a couple of blocks. Brandon Rechsteiner says 16 points here, now says 19 points on the stats. Jace Butler had 11. It wasn't his most efficient outing, but he did hit some big shots late, also got to the line, knocked down some clutch free throws, as he tends to do. Jorgensen, 11 points, but he also had 4 boards and a couple assists. Mooney's, like I said, 15 points, 13 of which came in the second half, 5 assists as well. He was one of those guys who consistently was willing to put the ball on the floor and attack. A lot of the time it results in him getting to the hoop, or it leads to, an open shot for Jorgensen at the top of the key, or Rec in the corner, or Jace Butler, or whoever it might be. I love the team mentality. The stats aren't crazy. You shot 45% from the floor, which is fine. 31% from 3, which, considering how you shot in the first half, all things considered, that evened out. But you had 15 assists on your 26 made field goals. All of that is a great example of playing team basketball. And even off the bench, JoJo McIver had a couple of key drives in this. I love to see him confident in attacking the hoop. I thought he hit a 3 in this game too, but it's not listed in the stats. Darnez, I don't feel like things dipped for CSU when those guys were on the floor. And I'm happy to see Darnez getting a little bit more of an opportunity here. I think, one, just the fact that you're going to need that depth if you're able to make a real run, if you're going to create some magic in the Mountain West tournament, win 4 games in 4 days. It's going to be a test of the depth of this team. And you have a lot of guys who you can play. I mean, even Japa, who's really not playing for the Rams right now, is somebody who played key minutes for CSU down the stretch this past year. They've got a lot of different guys, and that was a balance as CSU tried to iron out the rotation. But now they figured it out. We'll see what happens with Pasquarelli if he plays on Saturday. My gut, maybe you play him a couple of minutes, or you just wait for next week where the games really matter. I'm not trying to say this game doesn't matter. It certainly does. I'm not trying to overlook Tim Miles or a frisky San Jose State squad. They beat Nevada a couple weeks ago. So it's not like you can take them lightly. Colby Garland is a bucket. They just don't have the depth. This is one where your depth should be a great strength for CSU. If you can create points off of turnovers like you did the other night, 13 points off of turnovers in the win over Fresno State, you should be in a good spot. It's not like it's going to be a hostile atmosphere or anything like that. But here is Ali Faroukmanesh on the growth CSU has had throughout the league slate and just kind of learning how to win some of these close games. I don't know if the Rams win this game against Fresno State 5-6 weeks ago, but a lot can change over a month. I mean, how much have we talked about that? Here's Ali Faroukmanesh, my bad, production.
Talked about the adjustments that you have to make as a team. And it's not that you're short in this area or you can't do it. Just we had to adjust. We had to adjust to our mentality. We had to adjust as a group. It's been cool to see. We had a long talk about the physicality, the mentality, and the connection. Those 3 things we talked about over and over again. And it still goes, like the Air Force game, we usually write up the defensive game plan, the offensive game plan, the kind of mindset thing at the bottom. And all we wrote that game was physicality, mentality, and connection. And I think that's been showing up. Like the 50-50 balls, we've been winning at a higher rate. The huddles have been so tight. I think there's small little invisible things that you don't see all the time that when I'm watching film, like I kind of care. I care about that stuff more than I do makes and misses and whatnot. More about, are we huddling the right way? Are we communicating? And I thought the energy was off to start tonight. But like I said, it's your third game in 6 days, and yeah, that's easy. We're not the most athletic team. So like we have high IQ, great skilled basketball players. So it does take a toll on you. But for them to adjust the way they have and to be where they are now, it's been fun to watch that growth.
I've had a lot of fun over the last month with this team. There were certainly moments of frustration. You look back at the initial loss to Fresno State, the game against Utah State, the game against DU. I mean, if you just have those three that you absolutely should have won, you're in the at-large conversation. Now you've got to do something pretty crazy if you're going to have any chance of getting in there. I think still there's a slim possibility if you can win out in the regular season and then win at least 3 games in Vegas. Maybe if you get a little bit of help. The bubble isn't crazy strong this year, so I won't completely rule it out. But obviously those hurt, and it could have gone a different way, right? This team very easily could have folded on the season, basically played 500 basketball. And instead we've seen them fight. We've seen them find a way to factor into the mix here down the stretch, which is really all you can ask for in year one. Certainly would have been great to just hit the ground running, dominate. But this team's got a chance to win 20 plus games. They beat CU. They had some significant wins in the non-conference slate. And now you've been able to beat Wyoming and beat San Diego State and, sweeping UNLV, who's a frisky team, beating GCU on the road. They have some significant wins. It was just a matter of consistency. And now you've kind of been able to find that finally, regardless of where CSU ultimately finishes, how far they go in the tournament. I do feel like the outlook moving forward, based on the way this team has responded, should be very much positive. I think there should be a lot of excitement when you look at the coaching job the team has done, both from a sense of being able to iron out the rotation and find ways to optimize these individuals and play to their strengths, but also just from a buy-in perspective and keeping everybody on board with the vision. When you start 3-8 in league play with as many new pieces as CSU had, a worse coach team probably loses the locker room. And I think it's a testament to the relationships that these coaches have, but also the trust that the players have in them, that they stayed true to the vision. And we've seen it kind of flip finally. They were able to weather the storm and come out stronger on the other end. Really excited. I mean, player retention is certainly going to be a big factor in this whole conversation, and there's no guarantees in modern college basketball. We all know what it is. We watched Kyan Evans get $2 million from UNC last year, so anything can happen. You're probably going to lose at least one guy that surprises you, a couple of guys that won't. But if you can hang on to the majority of these key pieces, and really Mooney's is the only guy who doesn't have eligibility after this season. So, I mean, there's an opportunity, if people are willing to stick around, to bring, 6 of your 7 de facto starters back this next season. Realistically, probably going to be more like 4 or 5, just given how things tend to play out. But even with that, you would feel really good going into next season. I'm excited to see how it plays out. That said, I'm really excited to see how the rest of this regular season plays out, and then the conference tournament. Feels like so long as CSU goes 2-1 here, and you've got to beat San Jose State, but it feels like so long as you go at least 2-1, you should be able to avoid that 8-9 draw. You just don't want to have to deal with a third game against Fresno State or Wyoming. Both of them are frisky. They're teams you should beat, but they're going to play really hard. And Fresno, for whatever reasons, just been kind of a wonky matchup for the Rams. Wyoming would be really charged up. You just don't want to have to deal with that. Give me Air Force or San Jose State with nothing to play for if we can, and try and prevent some of the tread you're putting on those tires in game 1, game 2 potentially. Because again, winning 4-4 is just such a tough task. There's a reason only one team has done it ever. But you never know. Crazy stuff happens in college basketball, and certainly with how hot this team is right now, if you find a way to win out, maybe you just have crazy momentum and things just seem to fall CSU's way. The vibes are good across the board in Moby right now. CSU women's basketball won 4 straight as well. They snapped a 10-game losing streak to UNLV. I think that's the biggest win for Ryan Williams in probably the last 3 years. I know they beat Gonzaga and Oregon State and some teams like that, but they aren't that good. UNLV has been the face of the league now. I mean, they've been like the San Diego State or Utah State on the women's side. And they'd been a problem. So great to see. Just wanted to shout them out before we forgot. But I do think that the Mountain West on the men's side is still going to get multiple teams into the big dance. I will say the recent struggles of teams like Utah State and San Diego State, it makes it a conversation, right? It's unfortunate that the narratives work that way. You look at the top of the league, and it does feel like anybody is capable of beating anybody. The parity is great. Maybe the ceiling of some of these teams isn't quite on par with these last couple of years, which has been really the best stretch of Mountain West basketball that we've had since, like, going back to the late BYU San Diego State days when you're having, New Mexico in the pit is roaring and Jimmer's doing his thing and Kawhi's at San Diego State. Like, the league was so good then. But it's been really impressive these past couple of years. And I don't think it's a 6-bid league like it was a couple of years ago. But I think if you watch these teams play consistently, that it's certainly deserving of being a multi-bid league. How many teams that ultimately ends up being, we'll see. I really think it gets wonky for the league if Utah State collapses down here. They've lost 2 straight, including a game to San Diego State, who seemed dead in the water, and now they come back and win. It's been so wonky this past month. San Jose State Nevada loses to San Jose State. They come back and then beat Utah State and New Mexico. San Diego State looks dead in the water. Really looked kind of soft in that second half against CSU. Then they come back and punk Utah State. It's all over the place right now, and because of that, it could ultimately kill the Mountain West just with all the in-league cannibalization that we're witnessing. What's really frustrating to me is, that's validation of multiple teams being good. And I think that's a good thing for college basketball when it's not a WCC type scenario where it's Gonzaga and everybody else. And I say that with respect to programs like St. Mary's and Santa Clara and San Fran, who have all been very respectable, St. Mary's especially, a team I'd like to see the Pac-12 add on the basketball side. But it just really drives me insane that you look at leagues like the Big Ten and the SEC, and there'll be 500 teams that finish 10th in those conferences. And the narrative will be, well, everybody's so good, so you've got to give them a break with some of those losses. And then, Utah State loses to a team like San Diego State or New Mexico, whoever it may be. And now all of a sudden people start looking at the Mountain West with skepticism and acting like this is the Big Sky or something like that. And I love Big Sky basketball. Don't get me wrong. I'm hoping to see UNC get hot here, although they lost to Eastern Washington the other night, which was a bummer. They were seemingly hot as well. I just get really annoyed with some of the conversations that tend to revolve around Mountain West basketball, because it's very clearly a top 6 league, if not a top 5 league, year in, year out. It's been so much fun in these past couple of years. We've seen teams like Utah State with Sam Merrill, that Malachi Flynn run with San Diego State, last year with Neek and CSU, even, New Mexico and Jalen House and what they did a couple of years ago. This is an awesome basketball league. I'm really going to miss it. Like, I'm super excited for the future. The Pac-12 is going to be epic with Gonzaga. You cut off some of the fat on the bottom, although, I mean, I think you could make an argument that programs on the basketball side only, like Nevada, UNLV, New Mexico, going to be more consistent year in and year out than, Washington State, I think, in the Pac-12, or even Oregon State, who will spend money, I think. But, are they going to be able to hang with Gonzaga or San Diego State? Are they going to be able to go into Moby or into Logan, Utah, and beat those teams with consistency? I don't think so. I think there'll be a pretty clear-cut top 5 there, and then kind of everyone else. But it is going to be a little bit bittersweet, and I'm excited to be able to get the opportunity to go out there and watch all of the action. It's always one of my favorite events to cover year in and year out. It's fun to see the fans and interact with people from around the league, but it'll be a little bit bittersweet. So before we get out of here, I do want to give a power ranking. I'll answer a couple of mailbag questions. We'll call it a day. We're going to kind of fly through this because there hasn't been a ton of change. It's funny, you look at Utah State, they lose 2 in a row, and you would think, should they come off the top spot? But it's tough because New Mexico dropped a game, to Nevada the other night at home. That's a game they should win. San Diego State, you want to give them credit for beating Utah State, but they lost 2 before that. Nevada's hot along with CSU, but they had the loss to San Jose State within the last 3 weeks. It's just been all over the place. So I've got Air Force at 12. Still have not won a Mountain West game, looking like they might go the whole season, although a team like that in the tournament could be dangerous just because you've got nothing to lose if you're Air Force. So why not just jack up every crazy shot you can? Tim Miles and a frisky San Jose State squad at 11. Don't overlook them or you will be sorry. Garland is a bucket. Fresno State at 10. Wyoming 9. They're a team, again, that you don't want to have to deal with, but the consistency hasn't been quite there against some of those top teams. They play really hard, though, and I think that's the biggest compliment I can give them. The buy-in is there. I've got UNLV at 8. At times, they've looked as good as a top 3 team. At times, they've looked worse than Fresno State. That is the UNLV basketball experience in the 21st century. It's confounding. I've got Boise at 7, although maybe turning a corner a little bit here in the later stages of the season. They've got a lot of experience, so I think you've got to take them somewhat seriously. But I've got GCU at 6, CSU at 5. I just think CSU 6-game win streak, they deserve to be in that top 5 conversation. And GCU, they lost at home to Wyoming recently, so that's going to hurt the rep. Nevada 4, they responded really well after I wrote them off. I'd been high on Nevada all year. Felt like I was higher on them than everyone else. Finally, I sell my stock, and then they come back and rip off wins against Utah State and New Mexico. Fuck if I know, man. San Diego State at 3, New Mexico 2, Utah State 1. Again, not a ton of movement in that top 3. That's because they've all lost games of late. I do think, though, that CSU is capable of beating any of these teams. There's not anybody you look at and think, man, there's no scenario in which I could see the Rams pulling this out. And that's what's fun going into the Mountain West tournament, right? Eric in the Twitter chat says, is it auto bid or bust for CSU? I think it might be. If you were to ask me today, the answer would be yes. If they sweep or if they win out in the regular season, so you win these next 3, plus you win a couple of games in Vegas, you've got a chance. I think you at minimum would have to win the next 6 games and play a very competitive game in the conference championship to have a chance at an at-large bid, just because you've got some real things on the resume. I mean, that loss to DU from a metrics perspective is a landmine. Losing that game against Fresno State, not getting that Q2 win against Utah State at home, that kills you. So it stinks. It is what it is in that regard. There's a lot of woulda, coulda, shoulda with this team. But we'll see. You keep winning here. You keep the streak going. The conversation can change quickly. I posed on Twitter if anybody wanted to give some mailbag questions that I would dive into them. So let's do that here before we get out of here. Could be something we're into the show with more consistency if you guys have fun with it. But got a question from Aaron Harris. He shared a graphic that kind of showed some of the coaches last year and how much the number 1 wide receiver in their offense basically got a target share. And you look at what happened at UConn, and Skylar Bell was basically getting 28% of those targets. So who is the number 1 wide receiver for CSU this year? Do we know? If I had to guess, I would go Mosley just based on production to this point, but Vic is somebody who I think has a really high ceiling, and I'm excited to see. So those would be kind of my two guys I would pinpoint early. H. Anderson wants to know, do I think the volleyball and track and field teams will win conference championships in the first year of the pack? CSU should certainly be one of the teams in contention on the volleyball side. Utah State has a really good program, though. I don't know a ton about the Olympic sports with Washington State and Oregon State yet, so we can dive into that a little bit more as we get closer to the Pac-12 era. Clark wants to know, what's my biggest concern for the football team? What's my biggest sense of optimism from a positional standpoint? Concern is probably just the unknown with the offensive line. I think they did a good job on paper going out and getting some intriguing tackles, adding some size. I love that they have continuity from a coaching perspective in the trenches there with Mora's staff this past year. My biggest reason for optimism, probably the tight end room. I just think they have a chance. I think they've got 3 guys that, based on what I've seen, could be playing on Sundays someday. I am excited about the running back room too, though, now that they were able to bring over Darrell Robinson. You would have loved to land Cam Edwards just after the season he had, but Robinson is another guy, at least on paper, who I think has a really high ceiling. Oh, shoot, accidentally closed out of it, of course. I had somebody else ask me about the most recent bill that's being fought by both CSU and CU. I know there's some Fort Collins locals who don't like the noise from the stadium. I've ranted about it before, but don't live next to a college campus if you aren't going to like dealing with the realities of living next to a college campus. And also, spare me with I saw somebody posting about like countless sleepless nights because of the loud noises. It's 5 or 6 games a year and maybe one concert when they do the PBR event. Like, cry me a river, y'all. It's good for Fort Collins to have these type of events. It's good for CSU. If you don't like it, you can move. Got a question here from regular Dad Bod. He wants to know, how long is long enough for the $1 beer snake? I think you basically get to go until it comes crashing down, right? It's one of those, you can keep poking the fire until you get burned and it hurts. But it was fun to see the students going ham, and it definitely brought the energy level up for a random Tuesday night game against an opponent that's not, going to move the needle. I've got asked if we can get a new DMVR Rams shirt. Tweet at D-Line. You guys got to spam them if you want new CSU shirts. I will try my best to make that happen. I know we are long overdue for a new Rams shirt, but he gets bothered by all of us on the staff. So I get it. He's just being harassed by everyone all the time to make new shirts. But I think that's the only way it's going to happen, just being real with you guys. Got one last question here, or a series of questions from our guy, Tyler Shannon. The significance of Ali getting to 20 plus wins in his first season, I think, is massive, especially given where this team was at in early January. The ability to work through the injury struggles to iron out the rotation, and also to see the proof of concept with high major transfers that you bring over and being able to elevate them. I mean, Jace Butler, Kerry Booth, Brandon Rechsteiner, all those guys were toolsy. All of them had things you could look at and be encouraged by, but all of them needed to really grow into legitimate D1 basketball players, and they have done that here at CSU under Ali. I've been very impressed with them in that regard. And then he wants me to rate the job John Weber has done as athletic director. I think to this point, from where he's at with crowd approval, like, if you wanted to do like they do with the presidents and you pooled CSU fans, I would imagine that John Weber's approval rating is through the roof, and I think that's deserved. They hung on to Medved a couple of years ago. They made the right call in promoting Ali. They were bold and willing to make a move from Jay Norvell and landed a terrific football coach in Jim Mora. I think based on right now, it's like a B plus A minus. I think it's an outright A if you actually have success in football, which is really what's going to determine, how he's viewed in the long run. Did they make the right decision in jumping to the Pac-12? And are you successful under Jim Mora? These next couple of years will really dictate the legacy of John Weber. But early indications are that he will be an athletic director that is very much revered and looked back on fondly. So that's where we're at. Shout out to everybody for rocking with us on a Friday. I'll be live again on Monday. Thank you for listening to the DNVR Rams podcast presented by Branded Bills. Head to brandedbills.com. Use that code BBDNVR for 15% off your first order. Much love, y'all. We are always proud to be. Peace.
We all silly like the mayor.